Okay, we're live and ready to start the meeting. Okay, I guess I'll get started. Good afternoon. I'm Jane Matthews, Chair, and I'd like to welcome you to the November 18th, 2021 Design Review Committee meeting. This is a 9-person committee whose primary function is to perform design review for projects located in one of the city's 3 designated design review areas: downtown Asheville, the riverfront, and the new hotel overlay zoning districts. This is a mandatory review, voluntary compliance process with one exception for hotels seeking to skip City Council review. Hotels taking advantage of this incentive must receive a positive recommendation from this committee. All committee members and city staff are participating virtually. We appreciate your patience as we work online. We are streaming live on our Virtual Engagement Hub, which is accessible through the Virtual Engagement Hub link on the front page of the City of Asheville's website, and also linked on the committee page. You can also watch the meeting on the city's YouTube channel. We also have an option for the public to listen live by phone by calling 855-925-9801 and enter code 9410. When we get to the public comment section, you may dial the same number and press *3. For all of you out there with us today, welcome to the meeting. I will now go through and introduce the committee members who are participating virtually. Please make sure your microphone is not, if you are not speaking, is on mute. And when you have a question or would like to speak, unmute your microphone or use the raise hand function to let me know, and I will acknowledge you. Please remember to mute your phone after you're done speaking. Committee members, as I call your name, please say a quick hello. Jeremy Goldstein.
Hello.
Let's see. Stephen Lee Johnson.
Hello.
Brian Moffitt.
Hello.
Kimberly Hunter.
Hello.
Ben Williamson.
Good afternoon.
And Vice Chair Robin Rains.
Hello.
And I think we have missing Karen Craig-Nolan, if I'm correct. I believe she has not joined. So we have a quorum, and to help our audience follow along, I'll state each section of the agenda aloud and do a vocal roll call for each vote if there is a vote to be taken. Additionally, I ask that committee members raise their hand to speak, as I mentioned, and I will call upon you. We will begin with our administrative items, and we only have one item, and that is approval of the minutes of our meeting from October 21st, 2021. I guess, has everybody reviewed that? And if so, if I could have a motion on that?
Motion to approve.
A motion to approve from Brian Moffitt. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Jeremy Goldstein. Thank you. Okay, and I will call the vote on that. Jeremy Goldstein.
Aye.
Kim Hunter.
Aye. And it's just so for record, it's Kimberly or Kimmy. Thank you.
I apologize about that, Kimberly. Stephen Lee Johnson.
Aye.
Brian Moffitt.
Aye.
Ben Williamson.
Aye.
Robin Rains.
Aye.
And myself, aye. So we have no other administrative business, and so we'll go to our new business, which is the design review presentations. We have 2 projects seeking formal design review, one which is asked to be continued. We have 1 item for policy discussion and one project currently for informal design review, but one of the formal projects has been asked to move to informal. We will take these cases in the order that they appear on the agenda, and staff will kick things off with a short presentation, after which the applicant or the design team members will be invited to speak. Once presentations are done, we will also pause to take any public comment. Please keep in mind that it's not uncommon to have technology issues during these presentations, such as a screen freezing, or during public comment, such as participants losing connections. If this happens, please exit the meeting and re-enter using the same link or call-in number you used to join. We will now begin with our first new business item on our agenda. which is item A, 123 Haywood Street. And staff has notified us, this applicant has asked the project to first formally be continued to our December meeting, and the second to be considered for informal design review at today's meeting. So I would ask for a motion maybe on combining both those two requests. If that makes sense. If I need to repeat that, let me know.
I'd make a motion to continue it and hear the informal review subject to time, if we have time to do it.
Okay, I will move it to the end of the agenda. And the formal review then would be on our December, and I believe it's the December 16th meeting. Is that correct, Sasha?
Yes, it could. I don't think we need to continue it to a date certain.
Okay.
I mean, we'll just advertise for whenever we do it again.
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second, I guess.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Robin. Okay, I'll call the roll on this one to get approval. Jeremy Goldstein,
Aye.
Kimberly Hunter,
Aye.
Stephen Lee Johnson,
Aye.
Brian Moffett,
Aye.
Ben Williamson,
Aye.
Robin Rains,
Aye.
and myself, aye. So item number A on the new business will move as time allows to informal design review at the end, following another project that we have on our agenda. So we will move to item B, which is 324 Biltmore Avenue, amendment to a conditional zoning request. And I'll turn it over to Sasha, I guess. All right. Or is
I think
that
I'll do
Shannon?
this one. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Shannon.
So let me get my screen fired up. Okay, so as the commissioners may recall, we reviewed this informally at your last meeting, and this is a little bit of an unusual project. At least it's it's less common or atypical for what you typically see. So this is the first hotel that you have reviewed that's outside of the downtown or the River Arts District. So this is in the city's newest design review overlay, and it's the hotel overlay. Oh, excuse me. Let me clarify that. This actually is not in the overlay, but it is a hotel that was approved right before the hotel moratorium, which ultimately resulted in the establishment of the overlay. So this was a conditional zoning that was approved by council, I think back in 2017, 2018, I believe. And the applicant is now seeking some facade changes, some design changes to the exterior of the building. And because the conditional zoning is very specific in saying that the project must substantially comply or be consistent with the approved plans, this will require re-review by city council. So this is on course as a conditional zoning amendment, these design changes. The applicant's also making a very small use change as well. So that will also be reviewed and heard by council. But as it relates to the design, because this is a project that predated the establishment of the design guidelines, but is post-dating the establishment of those guidelines by its amendment, we thought it was just a good idea to go through design review. So the design review standards are a little bit different. We went over those some last week or last month. I'll go through them again when I kind of get into some of the nitty-gritty. But first, I wanted to remind the commission of some of the items that they identified as being something of a concern. The first was the extensive use of EFS. As you see in this elevation, the sort of the off-white color as well as the red brick color and these horizontal paneling looking material, that's all EFS. We do have some other materials though. We've got the metal screening along the parking garage. We've got with potentially some green screen. We've got the glass that's been added as a new feature. And we have this rough cut stone or block at the base and up and this vertical element as well. So the extensive use of EFS was one of the items that the commission identified. There is a blank facade on the north side of the building. That would be the side, which that is the south side. Here's the north side. There was some concern about that. The applicant is proposing to sort of help break that up with a mural of some kind. And I think these windows have been added new as well. There was some concern regarding the massing related to the cantilevered portion of the building. I believe that's this section of the building that was being referred to. In the previous design, there were these little kind of skinny posts that looked, I guess, sort of insubstantial to support that. And so that's been sort of revived or revised to kind of take those elements out. The mass of the building was not broken up enough so that it was reading as a single long building as opposed to sort of different buildings that were attached. And I think there have been some revisions. Possibly it's this material maybe that now comes down to the ground. I'm sorry, I couldn't find a copy of the rendering that we reviewed last time, so I couldn't quite recall what exactly had changed. And then there was a recommendation that the applicant look at adding some ground level green space, recommending about 5%. The site elements of this project are not proposed to change, and those are consistent with what was approved. So the opportunity for adding green space might be limited. So because these design standards are a little bit different than what the commission has reviewed before, I went through, and just as a reminder, the hotel standards are basically broken into 3 sections. There's the site design standards, the building design standards, and then the design or the operational standards. I didn't identify or kind of go through each of the different site standards, since we're not really looking at the site for this particular project, and focused on the building design standards. So I kind of went through the report and through the guidelines and sort of identified which of those guidelines that I felt like were being satisfied, and then focused on the ones that maybe were not being satisfied or were only partially satisfied. And that pretty much comes down to materials, lighting, signage, and the blank wall. So materials, we talked about the use of the EFIS. Lighting and signage, I think, was probably just sort of a prototypical thing, but it was there on the plan. I felt like I should probably identify that as not really being consistent with the guidelines, but I imagine that that's something that can be reviewed in more detail as we go through construction permitting. Signage would be a separate permit altogether. So I think it really kind of comes down to the materials and the blank wall. And both the south and north ends would be, with those blank walls, would be visible from the public right-of-way. So from Biltmore Avenue, you will see both the south wall shown here, as well as the north wall. And I believe that pretty much summarizes what I had intended to cover. I'd be happy to go back over any of these or answer any questions that the commission has, or I think the architects may also want to add a little
Shannon,
explanation to their changes.
Stephen Lee Johnson has a question.
Thank you. Is there any additional site plan for this other than what's shown for the first floor plan? Reason I'm asking, I understand that there's not a lot of leeway to change green space elements, but there's a lot of stuff that's being shown in the professional renderings that really isn't shown in the applicant's drawing right now. And a couple of things I'm seeing that are really kind of off their property that look good in the rendering and probably aren't going to be able to be done, but just curious if there's some kind of more detailed site plan that shows their zoning compliance and that type thing, or is that still to be submitted?
It doesn't look like this. I'm not sure. Let me go back. I'll have to go back and look and see what was submitted. Or Warren, do you have a copy of your site plan? Would you maybe be willing to
could-
share that?
I could probably pull up the site plan from previous submittal. We haven't gone and made a new site plan for this one because of what Shannon was mentioning. There just hasn't been much in the way of changes on the site. Stephen Lee, you had mentioned concerns over things that you thought were off property. Is that a specific area?
Part of what I'm trying to do, because this is the first time I've seen this, I'm trying the applicants, and it's not y'all's site plan, but the site plan I'm looking at, it's a little difficult to see exactly where this project is. I think I've just figured it out. I know it's at the intersection of White Fawn, and I think I was on the other side of the road, and I was, so I figured that out. There's not any street tree requirement in front.
So
There-
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Shannon.
There is a street tree requirement that was modified through the conditional zoning process due to some underground utility conflicts.
Okay.
So they're doing planter boxes instead.
So that's one thing that I think would be important to show up as a part of design review are the exact specifications of what it is they're planning. Because what we're reviewing right now, really we can't comment on, but the professional rendering shows some really nice stuff, but we all know how that works sometimes. And I'm actually curious about how this, with the architecture, how this green planting is working in the middle of the building and what their system is proposed for that. A lot of times these are shown on renderings and they don't get installed just because they're tough to do. But if the architects are here, the rendering shows some interesting stuff at the pedestrian level, at street level, but it's just the rendering. So to me, that doesn't mean anything. It needs to be in a clear drawing, like specified containers if that's part of their alternative compliance, specified containers, and frankly a planting plan that shows what exactly is going to happen there.
So I appreciate that if this were a new application, but
Yeah, and I
because
understand
this,
that,
because this is an amendment,
Mhm.
and we're only what's being considered really is only the facade changes. So
Yeah.
we can't reopen what had previously been approved.
Okay, and that I completely understand. So maybe they're going to do us a good job on this stuff that we can't comment on at this time.
I can speak a little bit to that. Hi, I'm Erica with ODA Architecture. So as far as the greenery, we're looking at potentially fake greenery, just so it's green all year round versus trying to keep something real alive. But we can also look into that. And you're correct, we haven't really got into the details on that. And with the planters, we do have them shown in the rendering, but you're correct as well. We haven't specified any plant materials or specific to the area as well. And we'll probably need a landscape architect to kind of help us with that. But yes, we will be detailing that out and showing that when we get further into construction documents. So thanks.
All right. And since you responded to my question, I'm going to respond, but and not to draw this out because I know we can't really comment on this, but given it's a south face, I would strongly encourage no fake plants. This town will pick you apart fast on that, and they fade so quickly on that face. But thank you for that comment.
Yeah,
Appreciate
no
it.
problem.
I did pull up the conditions that were approved as part of this project, and conditions number 8 and 9 kind of refer to the basic landscaping, and that in lieu of the street trees, there are 6 large planters being placed along Biltmore Avenue. And then I had also, here's a copy of the approved landscape plan for this project.
Shannon, aren't the greenery on the side of the building part of the facade that we're talking about, though?
Yeah, the greenery is new, and that's, since it's being directly applied to the facade, I think you can comment on that. But in
Okay.
terms of like adding open space or adding street
Sure.
trees or things like that, that would be hard to do at this stage.
Sure. Okay. I'm just making sure I understood what we were reviewing. Thank you.
And Brian, I just wanted to check that it was your question. I apologize, I didn't get to you fast enough.
Oh, yeah. I was supposed to wait. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. You're welcome. You're fine. Yes. Are there any comments from the commissions on the design changes? And again, we haven't seen, some of us were not involved in design review previously, so it's hard to know what changed from what got approved, other than what you're saying, Shannon. So,
Would you like to share my screen, Shannon? I've got it open.
If you don't, yeah, sure. If you can show what was previously discussed. Might be helpful to compare the two.
And I will get over to. All right, can you guys see it?
Yep.
Perfect. So this is the original that we had talked about last month. So as you can see, there's nothing sort of on this north facade. And then this block wall is sort of, just completely blank. So that was one of our main focuses. Another comment that breaking up the facade, we weren't really continuing that down to the street. So we have since updated this little detail here. Let me see. And then I think on
The cantilevered section.
yeah, so these were those columns you had mentioned, and then also breaking up this facade as well. And then I think that's mainly the comments that you guys had mentioned earlier, that seeing this versus, let me see, this one. So you can see we kind of dressed that up a little bit with adding a mural, relevant to Asheville. And honestly, I know I mentioned this last time, but I love this site because I drove by it every day driving to AB Tech because I grew up in Swannanoa. So I'm very familiar with the site and passionate about this. So anyone else have any more questions?
I just have a comment thinking about the mural. If the commission agrees that that is a good treatment for that side of the building, I would like for you guys and the property owner to consider an updated condition regarding the mural that will be adopted as part of the CZ amendment that describes it as produced by like a local artist, or some language like that is a non-branded, non-residence in image, something that's local and authentically artistic. I can give you some sample language after this hearing that we could consider.
I have a comment, and again, I wasn't a part. Oops, let me get myself on the screen. I wasn't a part of the first design review, informal review, but the thing I noticed was I think the pedestrian experience level is it's just not very friendly. I mean, you have the cars and the grills. It's really not a pedestrian experience I would ever want to have walking along that sidewalk. I don't know if that ever came up before in discussion, but I find it very abhorrent as architecture. Along Biltmore Avenue, it's just not very friendly.
Is there something you would recommend that they consider?
Well, it would change the design. I mean, we're looking at cars,
Yeah, we can't change the site. It is a 10-foot wide sidewalk, so it does give us a nice.
I know, but you get to look at cars and not at something happening behind it, like a retail space or a lobby or whatever. I mean, it's just, it's just not a very positive experience. And when you said plastic plants or fake plants, that really set me off. I mean, I think, that Stephen Lee Johnson was correct. You'll just be taken, butchered here in Asheville if that happens. Yeah.
Agreed. And we can definitely look at that. I've shared this rendering because this is sort of, as you mentioned, the pedestrian scale. What we tried to do, since the main lobby of the hotel is actually on the 3rd level. And this was because the original design had 3 levels of parking. So we were able to sort of decrease that to 2 levels and add the lobby to that 3rd level. So what we're doing here is with the glazing at the 1st level, you can sort of see up, and as you drive by, there'll be a lot of activity. So that's sort of how we were trying to incorporate the pedestrian scale along that corridor, mainly with the original design. They didn't have any of this kind of glazing. It was literally just a block wall for 2 or 3 floors and had some openings similar to what we have shown. So we hoped that, adding the glazing would sort of help. But I agree, it's hard to, have that pedestrian experience with sort of parking structure. But that was why we wanted to incorporate a little bit of green, and then also with the planters that are required as well. So thank you for that comment.
Well, I appreciate that. And, the other comment, I agree with staff. EFS, if anybody knows me on this commission, I really cannot, I abhor EFS as it's just not a permanent material and really does nothing to elevate architecture in our city. So, that's just my personal opinion. Kimberly Hunter has a question or a comment. Kimberly?
Yeah, I just wanted to apologize for not putting my camera on, but I wanted to thank you for your presentation today. I do want to make a comment. I hope you don't take it offensively. And we're not deciding on what you've already decided, but I just want to acknowledge that the structure itself and kind of all the pieces really resemble what would be more like an airport hotel or accommodations. And this is actually in the middle of the downtown corridor. So I understand you're not going to be making any direct changes to the plans. But I think it's important to say that although there's on-site parking, which is highly appreciated, part of our focus, there's some other things there that are really, I think, spot on. For the most part, I think where we are now as a city, based on when you got your approvals, this definitely feels like it should be across the street from the Asheville airport. Thank you.
Brian, you have a comment?
This is almost more procedural. Shannon, I guess it's directed to Shannon partly. So because this is we're not reviewing this in accordance with the standards of the hotel overlay district. We're reviewing this just in accordance with its preliminary CZ. Do I understand that correctly?
So you're asking, so this is,
well,
so this project is seeking an amendment to their CZ. And because the changes are design related, we recommended that the applicant come to design review, since hotels now come to design review. So this will be a voluntary compliance. This will be something that we'll just carry the commission's recommendation to council, and then council, will make the final decision.
Okay. So in other words, they don't, because they have a prior CZ or whatever, they don't have to comply with the current hotel regulations. Is that?
That's correct. It's not a level 2 that has to have a positive recommendation from the DRC.
Gotcha.
It's a conditional zoning.
Well, I just was trying to figure out, because, we haven't, as you said, we haven't actually reviewed a hotel outside of a district with standards, or we haven't reviewed a project outside of a district with standards that we're applying. And this one, we're not actually, I'm listening to Kimberly, I'm listening to several different people make comments, and but we don't really know what we have authority to require on this project. So the best we can do is make some which I think we did in the last informal, improve. We're just trying to improve it as much as possible, and carry some recommendations forward. Is that a reasonable characterization of what we're doing, and apply the spirit of the hotel overlay district recommendations to it? Is that reasonable to say?
Yes. And it's, I encourage the applicant to go through this process and let them know that the committee, is a valuable resource, so that you all would have good thoughts and recommendations that they could take into consideration that would improve the project overall. So that's the main purpose of coming before you today. So,
okay.
I wanted to
I'm sorry, to that end, one final comment. I still don't think they've addressed the blank wall. They added a picture of a tree and punched some windows in. They still haven't done, I don't think they've activated that other side. Yes, thank you. And I'm getting really tired of seeing murals as opposed to architecture. I'll just leave that there because, yeah.
I agree with you, Brian. That was going to be my comment.
And I agree with you, Brian, too.
I agree.
And in thinking about Ms. Hunter's comment, I thought it might be valuable for you all to see, this was what was originally approved as part of the CZ. So you can see that the new proposal is a fairly significant departure from this more kind of residential looking building with the angled roofs and the different colors and materials. So you can see the treatment at the ground level is different as well. This is not retail space, Jane, by the way, this glazing, it's kind of faux glazing to screen the parking garage. So,
Well, it may be better than seeing a car. That's the thing. Or you're looking through to cars. Was that?
I think you're looking through to cars.
No, it's pitiful.
Yeah. So I think this, one of the guidelines for hotels outside of the CBD and River Arts District is that we try to find something that's a little bit more unique and not so prototypical. I think the former design is more prototypical of a Residence Inn. This one's a little bit of a departure, especially with the glazing and that outdoor third-story lobby. I also appreciate that the ground doesn't have the fake glass. We generally encourage people to not make something look like it isn't, so not to make it try to look like a ground level when it's not an actual ground level retail, but to actually, let it be what it is and just do your best with it. So I think the metal screening that's proposed at the ground level, I think is also an improvement. And I appreciate they made the second story. Originally, I was confused. I thought that was supposed to be a second story and not part of the garage. And it was because the original plan showed these faux windows there. And I appreciate that they've now replaced it with screening but they've kept the windows. These openings are the same size as the windows and kind of follow the same pattern. So it kind of seems to transition better than it did before, in my opinion. It looks like they did offer a little bit of relief on this southern side. I think the previous version, it was just sort of flat with just a change in materials. So. But that's all good feedback, and I can summarize all of that when this goes to council.
Are there any other commission comments? Committee comments? If not, is there anyone who'd like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. I'm just curious.
I'll just make a motion to advance it to council.
All right.
With the following recommendations, maybe.
All right, I got you. I can do that. I move that we that staff forward our comments to council, and that council consider this project for approval based on the following conditions: that the applicant provide further information regarding the green screen and green material and plant material to be applied to the facade of the building, that the applicant consider the use of materials other than EFS for the siding of the building, and that the applicant continue to address design issues for the, I'm blanking on the direction, the north elevation of the building regarding fenestration and architectural detail.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jeremy. Okay, I will call the vote. Jeremy Goldstein.
Aye.
Kimberly Hunter.
Aye.
Stephen Lee Johnson.
Aye.
Brian Moffett.
Aye.
Ben Williamson.
Aye.
Robin Rains.
Aye.
And myself, aye. Okay. Thank you, staff. Thank you, applicant. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. The next item on our agenda is new business is policy discussion on an ordinance review change. Shannon, I guess that may be you.
Yep, that's me. So I shared a memo with the commission or committee earlier, just describing a change to the appointments for the design review committee. As it currently is, council appoints 8 of the 9 members, 4 coming from the Downtown Commission and 4 coming from the River Arts Commission, and then the 9th seat to be appointed by the committee itself. The proposed change, which came as a collection of recommendations that came with the 6-month report related to the hotel ordinance that was prepared back in September, was to change the appointments to all 9 to be appointed by council, with 3 coming from the Downtown Commission, 3 from the River Arts Commission, and then 3 at large. So the main change is that instead of 4 members from each of the commission, you have 3, and that instead of the committee appointing the 9th seat, the council would appoint all 3 of the remaining at-large seats. This seems to be generally favored. The Downtown Commission and River Arts Commission, this information has been shared with both. People were either neutral or supportive of the change. So this is going to council, I believe, in January.
Shannon, I have one question. I mean, because previously we were representing 2 bodies, I mean, Downtown Commission and Riverfront, which have criteria for membership. What are the criteria for the at-large seats, or the ones appointed that aren't representing those 2 bodies?
Well, so there are some general criteria for design review committee members, and that applies to all members.
Okay.
So that would include the at-large seats as well.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Tuck? Okay. If not, I guess I'll ask for a motion or if there's any discussion about this that anybody has, or if not, a motion to move it forward.
I'll make a motion to move it forward.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jeremy. Okay, I'll call the question. Jeremy Goldstein.
Aye. Aye.
Okay. Stephen Lee Johnson.
Aye.
Brian Moffett.
Aye.
Ben Williamson.
Aye.
Robin Rains.
Aye.
And myself, aye. Ms. Hunter has left the meeting. Okay, with that, we'll move on to informal review, design review. Our first project for formal design review is 72 Broadway. I don't know which staff members.
I guess that's me. And let me share my screen.
Okay, thank you.
So this came before the committee before. It is, some folks may remember it as sort of, it's like the evolution of what had been the Create Broadway project from a few years ago. It's a smaller site. It doesn't include all of the properties that the Create Broadway project had. So it really only has frontage now on Broadway. The previous plan, previous design, with more parcels involved, also had frontage on it's the other side, Lexington. So here is the new proposal. The main difference, I think, between this and what you saw before informally is that before, you may recall, the stair tower, elevator tower was right up in the front of the building. So kind of in the same location as this sort of bump out area was a blank stair tower or elevator tower shaft, both. And so staff quickly identified that as being problematic and inconsistent with the code and the guidelines. And I think that the committee also, wanted to see that explored further. So this design moves the stair tower and the elevator back into the building and replaces it now with actual heated square footage. I'm not sure about any other changes. I might let the architect kind of go over those if there were other resulting changes as a result of that. I think we have Peter and Eric here from MHA. And Sasha, did you want to say anything before we invite Peter and Eric to comment?
I guess I would only say that this project has not been to this committee before. I think
Oh, I'm
Great
sorry.
Broadway
That's
was
right.
a few years, like a couple years ago with the old committee, and I'm not sure if it looked the exact same or not, but that's all. Peter can address that. Peter and Eric can.
Okay.
Oh, it was in TRC that we were reviewing this? Sasha?
Sorry. Say that again?
Was it TRC that we reviewed this?
No, you and I went to the pre-app. I think.
Oh, it was the pre-app. That's
we
right.
spent time looking at it, but nobody else has.
I'm sorry. I apologize. That's right. So okay, I hope the committee members weren't all like, oh my gosh, I don't remember that. Sorry.
Are you talking about the one that you went and spanned both and went all the way to the other street? There was one on the same parcel that did that.
There was one that was the Create Broadway. That was the old project from several years ago. This is the evolution of that, and it's a smaller site. It doesn't include as many parcels, and it no longer has frontage on the other side. So It only has frontage on Broadway. But where I made a mistake was I remember reviewing and discussing the placement of the elevator shaft and stair tower being a problem, and Sasha just helped me remember that that was in our pre-app, not with this body. So you all haven't seen this before. This is your first informal review, so I apologize.
Peter, would you like to give us an overview?
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to review our project. As Shannon mentioned, this is the evolution of the Create 72 Broadway project that was submitted to the city back in September of 2019. Since then, we've made some changes to the program requirements or the program elements, and of course reduced the size of the project on a smaller site. If we can go back to that very first 3D view, Shannon. Now, let me just start there. The one, well, that's fine. There were two main issues that came up in the pre-TRC meeting that, in retrospect, really turned out to be excellent comments that have helped us evolve the project to a point where we believe it'll be much more successful. But before I talk about those specifically, I want to make everyone aware that what you're looking at here, this is a mass model. We're not suggesting any specific materials at this point, other than that around the entire building, there will be 4 different types of materials. Most of it will be masonry, some of it will be metal panel, and some of it will be ephes. But a minority of the surface area will be ephes. In the design of the window openings, the view that you see now on the left-hand side of the screen, that's along a property line. And on the other side of the building, there's a property line facing the Masonic Lodge. The back side of the building facing Market Street also faces a property line. So what we've been able to do is have the first 2 floors of the building abut as close as possible to the property line without undermining the foundations of the adjoining properties. Above the second floor, we've pulled the facades in deep enough to allow us for the window openings that you see here. Because of the building code, we can't make them any larger because we'd be in violation of the openings limitations in the code. So what we're doing is balancing having as much window area as possible by pushing the building as close to the property line to gain more square footage, but realizing that we can't be on the property line above the second floor. Now on the second floor, in this view, that's a blank wall. We cannot have any openings in it at all. It is right on the property line. at some point there will be a building in that lot, and there won't be any way to see that. We're limited to what we can do there to probably some type of pattern in the masonry or concrete or whatever material we use there. So please keep that in mind when you look at this, that we have some fairly tight restrictions in terms of the window openings. Now on the Broadway side, we don't have those restrictions, so we're trying to put as much glass area as possible in those wall areas in order to maximize the view, and also to pick up square footage that is much higher quality than a stairwell and an elevator shaft. So by requesting that we push all that back to the center of the building is a really a big positive change for us, and we appreciate that conversation that has happened very much. The other is that we've moved the driveway entry, which used to be on Broadway, around to the alley, which is, you can go to one of the next sheets that shows the, keep going, please. Yes, right there. That, where that garage door is, that's a public alley that runs all the way to Walnut Street. So that will be the access point for all the vehicles coming into the building. I could take Stephen Lee's question if.
Thank you, Peter. I'm having a hard time figuring out where this is. Is it directly beside the Masonic Temple?
No, there's a parking lot that's 60 feet wide between our building and Masonic.
Okay, can you go to the site plan and maybe point to us where?
Sure.
Okay, there we go. That's perfect. Perfect.
See, where, all right, if you look, see where the Masonic is, that there's 2 rows of parking that are there. There's a drive aisle and 2 rows, and then the next set of rows right there, that's our site. It's that L-shaped site right there.
Okay, thank you.
So we have to respect the property lines, because at some point there will be something built on that site, whether the Masonic Lodge builds it or someone else builds it. It's really irrelevant to us. We just can't have any window openings per code. Now, we're building, this is a very small site, and we're trying to accommodate all of the parking that we need for the building. In the code, we need to provide 1 parking space for every 2 bedrooms in a hotel, and we don't have to provide any for residential. What we're trying to do is provide all of the parking that would be required, and not stress or load any of the other, whether it's on street or any other parking facility close by, mainly for security and for convenience. So our parking structure, which is on the first floor, Shannon, can you go to the 1.0 level plan, please? Go back up. Back up. One more. No, I'm sorry. Go. That's the roof.
You want to go to the beginning?
Yeah. Not the next level up, please.
From the ground?
Yeah, that's the basement. Yeah, that's the basement. Let's go to the level. Yeah, right there. That's good. Okay, you can see, now this is in schematic right now, but on the left-hand side of the screen that's Broadway. We have a lobby into the hotel, which is relatively small. We have an exit way for the exit stair, which is required. But on either side of those elements pertaining to the upper part of the building, we have a retail space on the north side and a retail space on the south side of the building. So we feel as though we have activated the street in a way that will be very positive for the surrounding buildings and neighborhood, while still maintaining an entry into the lobby, which will be shared by hotel guests and also the residents of the building. Towards the center left side of the screen, where the cursor is, there's the alley that leads up to the garage door. cars come in, there's the green that you see, that's their ramp that go up to the second level and then down underneath down to the lower level that provide for this parking on the second level that's above the retail, and then parking on the O1 level, which is below the retail. So what we're doing in order to give this some integration, if you will, into the look of the downtown, the first two levels, the first, of course, will be the retail, and that will have full clear glass. The second level, which is where the parking will be, we don't want to see into the cars, but we will have glass there that will have some type of obscure characteristic to it, but it will still read as a more of a traditional two-level storefront, similar to what we did at 45 Ashland. This building, because of its height, is going to be classified as a high-rise building. So we have fire command unit or space on the first floor. The first 4 levels or so will be hotel. The number of hotel bedrooms is 35, so it'll be considered a small hotel per the zoning ordinance. Then above that will be 4 levels of residential condominium units that will all be for sale. There'll be a combination of some 2s and 3-bedroom units. On the top 2 floors, where we are above 75 feet, the zoning ordinance calls for the gross floor area, and it's not specific, but talk about gross area, we're assuming it's the enclosed part of the building, cannot be more than 8,000 square feet. Right now, we have 8,027 square feet. So we can play around with that a little bit, but want to get a sense from the group if that's something that you would all be willing to accept, given that it's such a small site and we're reducing the footprint down to as small an area as possible. Now, given if we had a larger footprint, we could accommodate a reduction to 8,000 square feet because we'd be able to make that up on the lower levels. This way, we're operating with a fairly tight site. So we feel on the design side that we're meeting the spirit of that. We're just missing it by 27 square feet of enclosed area. So that's something we can discuss in more detail maybe at our next meeting, but I just want to make you all aware that that's a condition we're looking at. The building will be all non-combustible material. There won't be any wood framing in it. It'll be cast-in-place concrete and a combination of steel tube columns, metal studs, steel deck, and concrete floor slabs. The windows will be, as I mentioned before, they're going to be as large as we possibly can make them, with the understanding that we have building code requirements that need to be met. Shannon, can you go back to the very first image, please? I think it was that 3-dimensional, maybe the next one. For the next one. Yeah, that's good. On the side, on the left, or the long facade that you see, that's the side that faces the Masonic Lodge, and that's going to be the facade of the building that will be most seen, but obviously by people coming from the north into downtown. So what we're trying to do here is use a palette of 4 different materials to break that mass up and to give it a scale that's similar in scale to the surrounding buildings, and have large area of window opening as possible to do everything we can to break up the blank wall of the facade, given the code restrictions that we have. There's one area, or there's several areas where the walls are a little bit blank, but we feel that rather than having spreading out smaller windows over a wider area is not going to be, or will be as effective architecturally as having a fewer number of larger windows that really are to the scale of windows that you would typically see in a downtown. So I'll take any other questions from the group. And keep in mind, this is just the very beginning of the design. So we're here with obviously an early version of our project. So
Peter, I have a question.
sure.
This is Jane. You talk about using a variety of materials on that north wall, or I guess that's maybe south. I don't know.
No, that's the north.
Yeah, north. Did you think about using any architectural elements or change in surface material, or instead of using just materials itself, but maybe shifting things back and forth or adding?
Jane, we're looking at, and we had some banding and relief elements on the model earlier. We took those off because we didn't want to share those yet because they weren't something that we felt looked that good. But a plain blank wall without some type of articulation is not what we want to do. So we're looking at, I don't know, maybe where we have stacked 6 or so or 5 windows vertically, that maybe that whole element sets in a little bit so that it reads as a vertical element. And then maybe at the sills, there's a horizontal element that wraps around the building potentially. So there's a lot of work to be done in that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm just thinking of its relationship to the buildings around it. There's so much articulation on the buildings across the street and next door that
Yes.
it just seems kind of weak, in relation to that. So, any other comments?
No, understood, Jane.
Yeah. I appreciate it, Peter. I realize you're at the early stages. Brian has a question or comment. Brian?
Yeah, so this is basically just a massing model at present. We're really not talking about form or even fenestration per se, other than the idea of fenestration. But in the image you've got on the screen right now, that corner that I'm looking at, and I do understand that you're designing the building for a future potential building that will be built right up against that lot line. But that corner looks unarticulated and unexpressed for such a prominent piece. And I'm talking specifically about the little door that leads back into the parking area. Yeah, that corner, and then the piece above it seems like you would want to, like, I like the coming from the other direction, that other side. You've got this step back and then this prominent tower piece, which I actually think you should jazz that one up. But then you should do like a secondary, like that's your primary statement is that bold piece that's coming out. Yeah, that one.
Right.
And that's the one I don't even know. Maybe you could play with making that its own thing. So instead of being layered, I like the layer of the parking area, but then above that, maybe it's its own thing all the way up. If you're catching my drift, instead of doing the layers with the rest of the building, so that it's really, and then secondarily, maybe you do something kind of similar, but a different articulation on that corner piece, so that you've got this rhythm set up there in what you're doing. Is that making any sense?
Yes, it does. That's an excellent idea to articulate the projected element. Maybe that becomes a singular material vertically all the way through the building that creates an image for the building. But
Yep.
obviously we'll look at that. But that corner, that's the northwest corner, and that's again, I agree with you. That's a weak point in it right now, and it needs work.
And then my other, we can talk about building organization and things like that. I know you're still working on it. I see and maybe I'm conflating projects, but that wall that faces the alley, there was some weird stuff going on in the model, and I wasn't real sure what I was looking at. Is that the one that faces the side that faces the alley where you drive it? Yeah, that. Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, I can't quite tell what's going on with that stair tower and there's like a line through it, and it changes materials for no good reason. I don't know, something about that's not reading right to me. And I realize that's a back of house, but we all walk past a lot of back of houses when we're navigating Asheville. So that feels like that corner and that corner is not as complete yet.
Right.
I'm dinging you for an uncompleted model.
No, that's, obviously, every building of this size has to have two exit stairs, and one
Yeah.
exit goes out to the street, and this one goes out to the alley because it's a public right of way, but it's, it's just a box right now that needs some help, but
Yes.
we need to show that this is where it's going to be.
No murals, please. Let's do architecture.
No, that's not the place for a mural. If we're gonna do one, it needs to be not in the alley, because the first thing that'll happen, it'll get tagged.
That's right. You watch. My next building's going to have a mural just to get in on the bandwagon. Anyway, yeah, yeah. I think that's all I've got for now. Thank you.
Thank you. While we're looking at this, just want to acknowledge we understand mechanical equipment needs to be screened. The parapet that you're seeing is 42 inches above the roof surface, so that should be plenty to screen the mechanical equipment that will be up there. We're not contemplating any large chillers. It'll be mainly split system heat pump package units.
Stephen Lee Johnson has a question or comment. Stephen?
Thank you, Jane. Peter, I know this is just modeling that you're sharing with us now, and we appreciate it. I know that the previous submittal that you had brought, which was a different project against the Moxie Hotel, there was a really strong emphasis on this newly emerging artistic corridor and this gateway as associated with the uses across the street with
Right.
an art component. Or do you see that this project, as you move forward, you're going to try to develop some elements that speak to that?
Yes, we'd like to. One of the unfortunate characteristics of losing the large Create 72 Broadway project was the walkway from Market Street to Broadway, which we obviously can't do here because we don't have the property or the space to do that. But we've talked about having this be an arts-focused design. And at the moment, we don't know exactly what that's going to be, but just speaking from my opinion, I think we'd be looking at that northwest corner as a place to put something that is an artistic element that's not just a painted on mural. There needs to be something more articulated, something three-dimensional, something that might be a contrasting material to whatever the material ends up being behind it. So, for example, if there's brick along that portion, maybe there's some type of bronze sculpture or steel sculpture that's built in and helps articulate that wall. Maybe it wraps the corner. That gives it a singular image that makes it unique.
So I have a question for staff or maybe one of the downtown downtown commission members. Is there not a requirement for a parapet detail or cornice to a building in downtown? That was my recollection, but maybe that's changed.
There's a requirement for a base metal cap. It's just sort of a design organization standard.
Or it can also be a vertical organization. It's not limited.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't limit the It says, for example, I think it even uses, you have to have a way to organize the building, and base metal and cap is a way. And so if they go that direction, then that's what we require. But then, if it's more of a modern building, they're not necessarily required to base metal cap it. And that's, actually where I was kind of going in that I don't think this building wants to be necessarily base middle cap kind of building. It doesn't, the architecture and the materials he shows them so far don't really go that direction, which is why I would think about, organizing it slightly differently and maybe emphasizing different elements as themselves. Does that make sense? Is that answering your question, Jane?
Well, I know,
I'd have
just
to, I'd
my
have to,
concern is just, having heard so much public comment about the kinds of buildings we're getting in downtown, just whether this actually feels or fits our downtown uniqueness, and that's the question.
agreed, which is why I think it needs a lot more articulation and detail, and especially when it's next to something like the Masonic Lodge, and it is such a prominent site entering the city. Agreed. But did we answer your question regarding the cornice and the cap?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that. It just, it just seemed like that was, I remember that as a requirement, and I just didn't see that in this design. So,
Jane, can I ask a question?
sure.
And it's really a question for the commissioners. And if once Shannon pans around a little bit, or can you go to that front the elevation we were just looking at, Shannon? So my question is for the commission is, I'm kind of a plain Jane kind of person and not necessarily an innovative architect, right? So, but I will say that I think that I would prefer this building given the site and how really, when you look at Google Maps, how small the site really is in a way, right? So, and it's what are we at? We're like at 9 stories or something like that. That I almost think, here at the step back there, they're leaving 1/3 of the building not stepped back, which is allowed by code. I think it would be better if it was all stepped back. It would be, to me, it would feel a little less intrusive at the street. So I'm just wondering if people, what you all think of that thought. It's less modern and less, I don't know, whatever, but.
We have 2 comments, one Stephen Lee Johnson and then Jeremy Goldstein.
Oops, I left my hand up. No comment.
Okay, Jeremy?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an architect either, but I kind of like that they don't have the whole thing stepped back personally. I like the variation. I mean, what's our height limit in this area? Is it 10 stories?
Oh, it's more than that.
Like
So
80 feet
Probably
or something.
145.
yeah, I think it's one.
Yeah, I mean, so we want density in tall buildings, at least I do in my downtown core, but I kind of like that it's not a full step back personally, what that's worth.
Seems like this design too kind of speaks to what Brian was talking about. It was a different organization, where you have these stronger vertical pieces. It's one way to approach it, I guess.
But there are some good examples of vertical buildings in downtown that have detail and articulation that make it more interesting than just a box. And I know, Robin, you had your hand raised. I apologize.
No, you kind of covered. I was just going to say, I agree too. I don't think it should all step back because I don't want it to look like a layer cake of horizontal lines. I think that if it is a small building on a small site, I think to enhance the verticality would make it more interesting.
Especially if they make that projecting piece really special.
Yes.
And it's articulated vertically. And I mean, if you think of the Jackson building, we've got some really nice buildings just here in Asheville and around the state and around the region that are much taller and don't step back. So the step back is in general a reasonable planning tool, but it can be overused too. And you don't want your whole city to feel like a ziggurat walking down the street. So I actually prefer some little moves like this that break that up as you go down.
Jeremy, you have another comment?
Well, it's really a question to the design professionals. I've heard you all mention about these different other buildings articulate. And I guess I want to be educated a little bit on what you mean by that. And I'll preface that by saying, maybe just answer the question. What do you mean by that? So I understand.
As if what we mean by articulating the connection to.
No, it was more, I think Robin just mentioned it, James mentioned it, Brian may have, but how you are articulating the facade, are you, rather than just, I mean, are you trying to make the buildings look like how they were constructed in older buildings? Or are you talking about in a modern sense? I'm just trying to understand what you guys mean by that.
I don't know that we've completely sold on one method or the other at the moment. We know that it needs to have a connection to that space, and that means if we investigate the other buildings around the area and more in-depthly and bring in, some instances of connectability to that facade, that may be one approach, or even just simply connecting the building with similar materials. And I just don't know that it's been down that path completely yet. I would say more on a modern, or if that is a little more literal, but how we make that connection, I think, is the challenge.
Jeremy, let me describe at least what I mean by the term articulation, which I think is what you're not necessarily asking about this specific building, but just what we mean when we keep saying that word.
Yes.
So in speech, articulation is when you are speaking very clearly and you can tell the difference between the words because you are correctly forming and placing your words and vowels and consonants in a way that makes it clear to the speaker when one word stops and another word starts. And in architecture is very similar. So we're talking about, when we talk about articulating a part of a building, we're saying that you're drawing a distinction between this part and that part, so that you are clearly communicating that this is its own thing and then this is a separate thing. At least that's what I mean when I say articulating.
And Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, articulation can be achieved through a variety of means. It can be
absolutely. It can be
changing
changing material.
It can
be shadow lines. It can be if you think about like take the Jackson building, incredibly well detailed and articulated building, but it's all pretty much the same material. Same for the Grove Arcade, but they do this with profile and shadow and basically just creating different layers of meaning within the building itself that clearly delineates when you change floors and even when you change suites and then when you go from open to closed. So yeah, it can be material, it can be mass, it can be detail.
I mean, I'd second all that. And I'd say that, when I think of buildings that I like downtown, the building that my office is in on 34 Wall Street, the Public Service Building. I mean, it's a tall brick building, but it has detail and it has elements of craft and art that aren't murals, but that speak to Asheville. And, I think Asheville created this commission or this committee to upgrade architecture, and I think that's our charge, is to try to get the architecture, even if it's a modern building, to have it something that is evocative of the craft that we all cherish about our city. I see Brian shaking his head.
Yes, that's a great question, Jeremy. And I would appreciate if you call us out when we're speaking gibberish and speaking in code. That's never the intent.
Well, there's always the push and the pull, the form and the function, affordability for businesses, for residents, for visitors. The Public Service Building is a function. I mean, what year was that built? And the craftsmanship,
20s,
materials were expensive and labor was cheap. And so I just want to be careful we don't try to reproduce something that we can't do well. But I take your meaning, Jane. I understand you more of an institutional quality and long lasting,
Well, that's also a National Design Award-winning project that won an honor award from the American Institute of Architects. So, I mean, that's something I think, the city could hold as an example of high quality of architecture in its city. And we have many buildings, but this one was given a national award, and I think that's something to look towards as we look at new buildings, because people are asking for it. People are frustrated, I think, with what we're getting. And I'll shut up and let Stephen Lee, you have another comment?
Thank you. So this is what I'm gathering. And, you know, the Downtown Commission has always experienced these projects coming from MHA in the very, very early stages, which I know we all appreciate. But I'm feeling as though, and Peter, just so you're aware, and I think you probably are, but there is an expectation level that is coming across right now that I feel like, I think as Jane had said, we are charged with at this point, to not basically just accept what has happened downtown, but what we feel like is appropriate. And even though this is a voluntary compliance, so as we move forward, I know we're all excited to see how you, beyond form, have this building really be special for Asheville, and be prepared for that. But thank you.
And just to clarify, because there is a hotel included and the applicant is pursuing the non-council route, this would wait. Oh no, wait. This is a conditional zoning, isn't it, Peter? Due to size. Is that correct?
I don't think
Warren, I don't think it is. Warren, are you still on the line?
Yeah, level 2.
It is a level 2. So it will require a positive recommendation from the DRC in order to stay a level 2.
One final comment regarding articulation and to answer Jeremy. Jane is not requiring that we do a neoclassical design at all. I'll hate to do this, but for the Clark Nexon's the city center building, that's only a 3-story building, but I would consider that modern architecture that has nice articulation.
That's one of my favorite buildings, actually.
Yeah, I personally like it very much. Nobody tell Chad. But I think that's a really good modern design that doesn't have that basemental cap. It's not a masonry building, so on and so forth. A well-detailed building. So at least in my opinion, and I think there's more than just me that would say that. So it's not necessarily I'm a preservationist. I love preservation. I love that kind of architecture, but we don't, that's not what we're just charged with, as Stephen Lee eloquently put it, you know, with elevating the level of design in Asheville, regardless of the specific style that they're choosing to do that in.
I love this conversation.
that's actually a great segue to our next item when you all are done.
Well, are Eric and Peter done with us? Do you have enough to go on right now? Yeah, I do like that building. Damn.
Yeah, I think we really agree with all of your comments, and I hear you, Stephen Lee. It's, you know, beyond form, be special, and I think we'll work hard to make that happen.
Okay, so I guess if we're done with that, we'll move on to the other request for a formal design review, which is 120, let's see, 123 Broadway? No, 123 Haywood Street, excuse me, I'm sorry.
And can you all see my screen? Oh. Can you all can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank
Yes,
you.
Sasha.
I can't see you all when I do this. I will figure that out someday. So this is a small hotel at 123 Haywood Street. I didn't have map Asheville pulled up, but well, here we go. So it is approximately, here's the Basilica here at the corner of Flint and Haywood Street. Here's the I-240 ramp. And this hotel is, or this project, I should say, is on these 2 small parcels. So it's a very small site. It's here near the Basilica, the Battery Park Hotel, and the Indigo Hotel project. And this project was a level 1 residential condominiums. It went through the process. I think it even got a zoning permit. After the hotel regulations were passed last spring, they are kind of exploring and trying to see if they can turn this into a small hotel. So we've been in talks with them since the summer. And one of the big changes in the regulation from going from a residential use to a condo use is you have to activate 50% of your frontage on the ground floor. So they have done that here. And, there are, they did turn in these renderings. I don't think they're is very easy to read. So I think it's almost nicer to look at the renderings. The folks who were on the downtown committee, if you can hear background noise, let me know, because I will tell other people to be quiet. The people who are on the downtown committee may remember this building. I got feedback from you back a couple years ago, pre-pandemic. And it looked somewhat like this here on the top left, or top right, excuse me. So again, sort of a modern building with kind of, I think it's a perfect placement for a modern building. You want it very different from the Basilica. I like a lot of the glass going on, but so this footprint did not, or this kind of building massing didn't work for the hotel regs, which really demand 50% of the frontage being activated. They have a internal parking garage. So here on the left of the building is a parking entrance here. So they are trying to, part of the thing here, and I'll let you all talk, John and Charlie are here with the project. I'll let you talk in just a second. So they're trying to keep this a level 1 project. So they added the retail without doing upper stories. So one of the base requirements in just a second, sorry. Sorry, I was getting really distracted. So one of the basic requirements in a downtown is that we have a 2-story height minimum. So as soon as I opened this up, I realized this is not meeting that. And we really require that for the entire building. It's 2 stories. We do have some, code around having additions, but that presupposes that there's an existing building there. Second, also, after we have the street wall requirements. So the idea is that we're creating street walls with our buildings, and then after the 2nd story, you can recess. Okay, just to make sure. But you can't recess the building at the 1st story. So that's part of the code issue here. Now, I will say what we do want to do is get your feedback on other parts of the building, the material, the glass, the site plan, and I'll let them talk. But we thought it'd be worth it for you all to take a look at this and give any feedback you have now. So I'll stop there. And John or Charlie, I don't know if you want to talk.
Yeah, Sasha, this is John Meng with Intech Group. I appreciate the opportunity to kind of be here with everyone today, and I appreciate the flexibility. We were originally going to have this in as a formal agenda item today, and appreciate the flexibility to look at this in an informal way after we kind of at the last kind of 11th hour there kind of came up against the as Sasha mentioned, the 2-story roadblock on the one corner of the building where we're trying to add the retail storefront addition. To back up a little bit, Sasha mentioned that this was previously approved at the zoning level. We have actually, the original design for the building was actually permitted through technical plan review and building permits are sitting ready to, I mean, we can stick a shovel in the ground tomorrow and start bringing the original concept out of the ground. That's how far along this is. And as Sasha mentioned, with the addition of the hotel overlay and things changing a little bit in the marketplace, we're trying to make the shift as economically as we possibly can to fulfill all those requirements and still have a very elegant, evocative kind of building, implementing those hotel overlay requirements, especially at the street, into the project. In terms of the 2-story at the street front, without having this corner here, how we were meeting that previously, there's a section of the ordinance that allows for a little small pocket park or open green space where we have put the retail portion now. It was where that retail where that little pocket park was. So in theory, what we were trying to accomplish was to kind of elegantly add the retail in to the scale that's appropriate with the height of the building at being only 4 stories on a very small site. The site's less than 1/4 of an acre. I think it's 0.19 acres to be exact, and still hold that street edge at a scale that's kind of appropriate to the rest of the building. When we talk about the base column and cap sections, we chose to use the kind of vertical orientation when it comes to defining the top of the building with the window, the kind of the taller floor to ceiling, vertically oriented windows to kind of bring that level of scale and articulation to the building as well. On top of the retail, and again, this goes back to some of the site constraints and being as small as it was and an existing surface parking lot right now. We were proposing a green roof, one that would help. We're about 300 square feet over when adding the retail component in on the stormwater requirements. So part of that is the green roof is part of our stormwater mitigation plan. And also by bringing that down to the 1-story versus having it 2 stories, is it's something that you can experience from the street a little bit better to enhance that streetscape and make it a little bit more visible from the pedestrian side instead of having it up and out of the way where you can't see it. As Sasha mentioned as well, and again, we had building permits in hand ready to go. This 1-story addition would be we meet all the requirements if this was an existing building to add a 1-story addition on in this area. I believe the requirements were under 1,000 square feet. We're at about 700 square feet with this addition. We're not anywhere near a contributing structure, so we're not within 5 feet. I think that was another condition, and there's 2 other ones. I can't recall those off the top of my head, but we meet those as well. So in keeping with the spirit of the of the entire embodiment of the downtown kind of requirements, the hotel overlay, I think we're close. Again, we just would like some additional feedback on kind of what we've presented to date. And everything from that, including the portion without the retail, is probably 99% identical to what was approved last year, both in the downtown review and also from the zoning review. So there's no really changes to what has been previously approved other than that retail addition. With that, I'll pause, and sorry to be long-winded.
I've got to leave. I've got to leave, so I want to.
I'm sorry, Jeremy. Yeah, go ahead, Jeremy.
Is the issue you're changing the use to take advantage of the hotel overlay?
That's correct. We've gone from residential
condominiums.
condominiums.
You're not looking to do a conditional zoning. You're looking to do level 2 build by right with the hotel overlay.
No, Close. We're level 1 by right is what we're shooting
So
for.
my understanding, and this is where staff, I'd love to hear from them, is that in order to take advantage of the not going to council, P&Z and council route, that you have to build without modification. You have to get a positive, approval from the design review committee. So whether or not it's reasonable and in the spirit, if you have any modifications, I think it kicks you directly into where you may not want to go. But that's my question. I'd love to hear the answer before I have to scoot.
But you're right, Jeremy, that in order to stay by right and avoid a council review for a hotel, there can't be any modifications. And the addition standards, I mean, first of all, this is new construction, so it's clearly not an addition. And to say that, well, we could do a courtyard and then come back 5 years and do an addition that complies, well, you would first have to start with a non-hotel building to do that. So that's one consideration. It's also, not really what the intent of the addition standards were set up for. Those were to provide some flexibility for existing buildings, to allow for some small one-story additions that were really accessory. And most of those additions are, to the side or rear of a building, not typically in front. We make some exceptions for some outdoor dining structures, but so that would be very unusual to try to come back and do that as an addition. And John, I think it might be a little bit more challenging than you think. At least the last set of plans I looked at, you were slightly over 1,000 square feet. I'm sure that could be adjusted, but I think the 50% might be a little bit tricky because the hotel requires that 50% of your facade be dedicated to create this storefront or this retail space. But then the one-story addition says that no more than 50% of your facade can be one story. So that kind of creates an interesting design challenge. So you would have to be exactly 50% and be under 1,000 square feet and meet the dimensional requirements for retail space. So I think it's a little tricky. I think it'd be a little hard to say you could do that as an addition later. But that said, I think for the commission's benefit and just to try to focus this conversation, whether or not this complies with technical standards is really for, that's part of the technical review. That's the staff review. That's the level 1 review. So that's not a question for this group. It's really more about what you think about the rest of the design.
I forgot to add, we don't have any murals. That's a positive, right?
Yes.
John, maybe you can talk a little bit about your materials. I'm confused as to what is the fake wood. Where is that? And you're talking about the metal cladding has a natural appeal due to its reflectivity. Where do you get that from? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, so the concept on the white, and I don't know if Sasha, you have the kind of narrative that we sent along, but the metal panel, which is the white part of the elevated structure above the parking level, was kind of brought from some of the historic, that last page, from some of the historic structures in Asheville and how they are actually ribbed, so to speak. Some of the terracotta detailing, some of the historic buildings have a slight bend to them and have a bit of a profile. So what we were doing with the metal panel was doing a very simple way, a very elegant way, just putting a light crease in it in the middle, at the midpoint of it. It serves a couple of different functions. One is it makes it a little bit more structurally stable, and so that we can use less material, right? Things with a bend in it don't oil can as much, and it'll be a kind of a straighter, truer look to the facade, but also to, again, mimic or take some inspiration from the vertical nature of, I think the Jackson building came up a couple of times. You see elements of that in a more traditional material, that we're trying to bring into this development. And then I think with the way that this building and the site sits on the edge of downtown, right along 240, and you have that great vista to the north and to the west of mountains and views and everything, was really to kind of let the building, I don't want to say kind of disappear into the sky, because I don't think that's possible, but to really visually minimize its impact on the the landscape and the surroundings. And I don't know if people are familiar with there's a mountain range in Alaska. There's this one mountain is called Moose's Tooth. And when you're looking across the skyline, I mean, it looks like a moose's tooth sitting there, right? And this would kind of be the equivalent to, to blending in with the, almost like a snow-capped mountain against the mountains in the background, and kind of hopefully, kind of draw a little bit of inspiration there. So that's kind of where we were, again, kind of streamlining our approach to the detailing of it with a very elegant kind of application of more modern materials, but with a traditional, kind of inspiration behind it. To go to I think Sasha asked about the wood framed elements would be mostly at street level around the retail edition, to add some warmth and an inviting appeal to, and a contrast to the metal at a level that people can touch and feel as they walk in. So you're not, you walk around the I think in one of the previous projects that we looked at today, you talk about, you're walking through downtown, and you have, you see a lot of service areas, right? The goal was to kind of create not a utilitarian edge along Haywood Street, but to provide more of a pedestrian warmth type of approach at street level that has a little bit of a pedestrian scale to it, more so than a larger building scale.
John, but is that not wood wall system real wood, or is it some kind of faux wood?
It's a faux wood for weatherability.
It just doesn't seem very urban. It's not a very urban material for downtown, it seems like.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the elegance of it as well. I think when you walk through some storefronts, when you get to that level, especially in some of the older structures, a lot of them have been replaced over the years, but you still do have some kind of wood doors, old wood storefront entrances. Again, so this would be kind of more of a modern, maybe not modern is the right word, but a 2021 approach to that.
I know Brian had his hand up, but I have one more comment. I guess I'm bothered by, I appreciate your comment about the metal being articulated, being folded, but the whiteness of it seems like a big white elephant in downtown. It just doesn't seem like it relates to anything. And I understand your analogy to mountains in Alaska, but this isn't Alaska. And I really don't see that as relevant to downtown. And reflective at that, you tout it as being a reflective material. So it's a shiny material, not matte finish,
Yeah, and I think using that word reflective, that was, I wasn't trying to suggest that it had a reflectivity quality to it, and that was the intent of it. I think it was more of a contrast to the brick and the masonry. Color is color. We can change that, and again, that was an analogy to Moose's Tooth. It wasn't to be a Moose's Tooth in downtown Asheville.
I appreciate that.
I think it was more just again, when you look at the indigo, this would be no different than some of the materials a block to the south at Indigo. There's some metal panels there. We can look at some color, options to soften that. I don't think that's an issue. So I think contextually, again, with that edge and the indigo, we're maybe inching forward a little bit from what's there, but I don't think it's too far out of kind of the existing context.
Yeah, and there was a lot of resistance on the Indigo when that was built. So, I'm not sure that that's the model to shoot for necessarily, but and I know Brian had your hand up. So Brian, I'll let you speak.
Thank you. So you've changed actually quite a bit, it looks like, from the previous design to this one. Sasha, could you look at, you're already on the A201B. If you zoom in on just the upper right, the previously approved renderings, the left, excuse me, upper left, my other left. So when you look at that image and the one right beside it, you have a very thin line. So basically you had your white vertical panels, and then you essentially had just the glass was vertical with a very thin line at the floor. Now zoom down into the next one. You've now changed the window dimensions. You've still got the vertical articulated panel, but you've got these little bands between the windows. So you've changed the basically the entire, in my opinion, I mean, you've deeply changed the design. I mean, it's no longer this, metal panel with a glass, that's expressed vertically. Instead, they've got these big, thick vertical bands of some horizontal material at the floor lines, and it honestly, it's not remotely as attractive to me. One, what is that material? And two, why'd you do that?
That would be another kind of a metal panel, very similar in color to the body of the building. The purpose for that was from a constructability standpoint early on in the process, and this goes back to probably 2018 at this point. There were, market conditions and material costs and constructability of building in an urban environment on a postage stamp size site. We were originally looking at a precast plank floor system, which allowed for a much thinner floor transition between floor levels. And, as the project progressed, we're wood frame over a steel frame podium now. So the floor depth structure has gotten a little bit thicker, so we had to compensate for that.
Sasha, can you scroll back up to the top real quick? Yeah, that is so much more handsome building. Is there a way to do a spandrel glass or something like that? I mean, it just, honestly, the way this reads with the way you were folding the metal in between the glass and the way it reads now, it's a completely different statement. What you've got now looks very flat. Whereas what you had before, at least in the renderings, especially the two images that you have, that right hand image, if you can zoom in on that a little bit, Sasha, it looks like even the folded metal was expressed like it had a deeper fold to it in the original. It looks very different to me. That would be my first. Yeah, that would be my first kind of. Yeah, thank you, Sasha. I apologize for dragging you around.
It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, anyway.
Yeah, I think part of, and again, as we, some of that was actually, I think, taken into some previous comments that we had experience from the review committee previously with, I think, I don't want to kind of open up a can of worms here, but I think the shipping, it looked like a shipping container somebody mentioned, a year ago. So we're trying to kind of thread the needle between bringing, making sure that it didn't go that route. That's not the intent at all. I think we're pretty clear with the intent of drawing inspiration from, from the rich history of the existing buildings on the downtown skyline. So we're trying to kind of walk the line, I guess, between, that comment and, holding the integrity of the design as it was originally presented. As time has gone on and real life kind of constructability and cost issues, which, supply chain, we all hear kind of things that are going on right now. We're trying to walk a tightrope, I guess, so to speak, with making this thing, getting this to the point where we can get out of the ground. I think one of the other comments and the other constricting thing is the 20,000 square foot limit for the level 1 review and staying underneath that. I think there was, we're pushing and pulling, trying to stay within that. And when you have a 20,000 square foot building, even if we fluctuate, 1,000 square foot here and 1,000 square foot there, in terms of pro forma, ends up being a 5% plus differential in the economics of a project. So we're really trying to walk a very kind of fine line, and also just get something that everyone is completely proud of, that's going to be here for a long time, right? I mean, this is this is a huge opportunity for everybody to have a really great project that everybody's proud of, and we're trying to bring all that together.
Sasha, would you mind scrolling from the image you have of the previous design down to the current one? That's the similar one. And it's just like a partial of that corner. I think it's that one right there on the bottom.
This or lower?
The one right above that one. Yeah. And if you could zoom in on that just a little bit. See how much flatter that looks with the vertical. I don't know. It just the way it's expressed, it's quite different. I get what you're trying to do on the podium, and I honestly could care less about it's trying to stay between level 1 and level 2. I get the pro forma. I get the material. We're all living that supply chain world right now, but the regulatory dance of trying to avoid a level 2, I don't really get that. I mean, it's not that big a deal. Just go ahead and do it. If you can make the numbers work. I'm more concerned with the fact that you don't have a 2-story piece on the street, and then the way the building is expressing itself just seems a lot. I like the other design better. I'll leave it there.
Are there any other comments from committee members? Doesn't seem so. Thank you, John. I hope that helps you.
I think so. It does. I appreciate everyone's time and feedback. We'll do what we need to do to kind of get everybody where they need to be, and excited about this, as excited about it as we are.
So Sasha, I realized that I never did open the public comment period. I need people to remind me.
I know.
I don't know
honestly, nobody actually was ever in the public comment line. We had some technical difficulties at the very beginning of the meeting, and so we were calling in, and nobody was in.
Okay, great. Okay.
And there's no one there now.
Okay. So I guess with that, I don't know if there's any other business to bring before the committee. Sasha, am I missing anything?
I don't think so. I think we had I guess a lot of folks have left, but we had a preliminary review last month for the 363 Hilliard, and I think that's coming for formal review next month.
Okay, great. So having no other business on our agenda, is there someone who'd like to make a motion to adjourn? Brian?
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Robin. Okay, I will call this vote.
You could just do it all in favor if you
are all in favor.
Aye.
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 Okay, I think we got at least 4 or 5 votes there. Okay, I thank you all. I thank all the applicants for their time, and staff as well. And see you all, I guess, next month. So,
thank you, Jane.
Thank you, Sasha.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, John.